Hey everyone, welcome to another deep dive. One question we get all the time is like, how do I stop translating in my head?
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
How do I actually start thinking in English? Like, it's this like ultimate goal.
It really is. Like you've kind of made it,
Yeah. It's like fluency, but not just fluency in speaking, but like thinking,
Thinking in it, yeah.
And so we have a really cool conversation today based on a conversation between two people who are, struggling with this. And so what I thought was really cool about the conversation is they really dig into some strategies.
Yes.
But they also kind of reveal the science behind why this stuff works.
Right.
So I thought was really cool. So they're talking about, the problem is that their native language is like acting as a middleman.
Yeah, I think we all can relate to that. Definitely.
Right.
It's like our brain is running a translation program in the background all the time.
Yeah, it's exhausting.
It's so much extra work, and so that takes away from your processing power when you're actually trying to think in the language.
It's like you hit a fluency plateau.
Definitely.
Because you're stuck in that loop.
Yes.
And so one of the things they were talking about, and I think this is something that everybody talks about, but the girl in the conversation is like, immerse yourself. But she's saying, don't aim to understand everything.
Right.
But just surround yourself. She's talking about movies and podcasts and stuff.
It's about getting used to the sounds and the rhythms of the language, even if you're not consciously understanding every single word.
Yeah, like the music of it. So
Yeah.
is there what's the science behind this?
Yeah. So the science behind that is that our brains are actually capable of forming those direct associations between words and concepts.
Oh, okay.
Without having to go through that middleman translation process. And that's because of neuroplasticity. Our brains can actually reorganize themselves by forming new neural connections.
So, okay, wait. So this is like creating a mental shortcut.
Yes, exactly.
Like a superhighway.
It's like creating a shortcut that bypasses that translation process so that you're directly accessing the meaning. It's like, when you learned your first language, you didn't sit down with a dictionary, right?
Right.
You were immersed in a world of sounds, and eventually you started making those predictions.
Yeah.
So you can actually replicate that process when you're learning a second language.
Okay, that's really cool. All right, so immersion, super important. What else did they talk about?
So another really practical tip that they talked about was focusing on describing things when you get stuck instead of immediately trying to translate it.
Okay.
So for example, if you can't remember the word bicycle, you could just say that thing with two wheels that you ride,
Yeah, that's cool.
Yeah, you're still communicating and you're pushing yourself to think in English.
Yeah, so you're not letting yourself off the hook.
Right.
You're still making yourself do it.
You're staying in that zone.
That's really neat.
And, the more you do that, the stronger those connections become.
So you're kind of building your vocabulary, but organically.
Yeah, exactly.
And speaking of connections, they were also talking about learning phrases.
Yes.
Like chunks of language, not just single words.
Yeah. And I think this is such a powerful technique because it really, it taps into how our brain naturally process language.
Oh, interesting.
So our working memory, which is responsible for holding information and manipulating it, has a limited capacity.
Okay.
And so when we try to process language word by word, it just gets overloaded.
Like a short circuit, yeah.
Yeah. But when we learn phrases or chunks, we're essentially compressing information.
Oh.
So it's reducing that load on our working memory, and it makes it easier to produce language fluently. So it's almost like learning pre-built Lego structures.
I like that.
Instead of having to assemble each individual brick,
That's cool.
You're working with bigger chunks.
Brick by brick, phrase by phrase.
Phrase by phrase.
That's really cool. Okay, what else? Anything else that they talked about?
So another one that that they mentioned that I thought was really interesting was thinking in pictures.
Oh yeah, I remember this one.
Especially for concrete nouns. So, instead of translating the word tree, you actually picture a tree in your mind.
Yeah. Its color, its shape, the texture.
Exactly. And this is, again, rooted in cognitive science. So visualizing actually creates a stronger link between the word and its meaning in your mind.
Okay, so this is where it gets interesting for me because I'm a visual learner, but I never thought about applying that to language learning.
Yeah.
It's like I'm building a visual dictionary in my head.
Exactly. And it's so much more engaging and effective than just memorizing definitions, right? And the more vivid that image is, the stronger that connection is going to be.
That's really cool. Okay, anything else? What other kind of cool brain hacks?
Okay, so another one that they mentioned that might seem a little bit unconventional is talking to yourself in English.
Okay. I do that.
You do?
Sometimes I do it in public. It's a little awkward. But like, is there science behind that?
There is, yeah.
Why does that work?
So when you're talking to yourself, you're actively producing the language.
Okay.
Right? And that's a really crucial step. So you're not just passively absorbing information, but you're actually forcing your brain to retrieve that information and to use it.
Okay.
So it's strengthening those connections, and it helps you internalize the grammar and the sentence structure in a more natural way.
So it's like a built-in language partner.
Exactly.
That's always available and won't judge you.
Exactly. That never gets tired of you. And, if you don't have the perfect vocabulary, that's okay.
Oh, okay.
You can use paraphrasing. If you can't think of the exact word, describe it.
Right. It's like playing charades in your head.
Exactly. So it's a fun way to kind of get comfortable with expressing yourself.
That's cool. Okay.
I've got one more for you.
One more. Oh, okay.
So have you ever tried shadowing?
I've heard of it.
Okay.
It always sounded kind of scary, though.
It can be intense,
Yeah.
but it's also super rewarding. So basically, you're just mimicking a native speaker as they're speaking. You're trying to match their rhythm, their intonation.
So it's like a vocal workout.
Exactly. And, using TV shows or movies can be a great way to do this because they offer such a rich source of natural conversational English.
Yeah.
Right? You're not just learning isolated words, you're actually hearing how those words are used in a real context.
Okay, that makes a lot of sense because I think sometimes the English we learn in textbooks,
Yeah.
it's not how people actually talk.
Right. So this is a way to, kind of expose yourself to those idioms.
Oh, that's good.
And the slang and the things that you don't necessarily learn from a textbook.
Okay, that's really cool. So it's almost like all of this is pointing in the same direction of, like, we're trying to stop the translation process and just go right into the meaning.
Exactly. That direct connection.
That's amazing. This is so cool.
It is. And, it's really about shifting your mindset from translation to really engaging with the language directly.
That's really awesome. I feel like we've uncovered so much already. We've got immersion, we've got descriptive strategies, like paraphrasing, thinking in pictures, talking to yourself, shadowing. I feel like we have this toolbox now of techniques that we can use to help us think in English.
We do. And there's so much more that we can explore.
There's more. Yes. Oh, okay. I can't wait. All right. Well, we're going to take a quick pause. Don't go anywhere, though, because when we come back, we'll be diving even deeper. We'll be looking at how to kind of make this a habit,
Right.
How to integrate this into our daily lives so that we can, make thinking in English a habit and not such a hurdle.
We'll be right back.
Okay. So we're back, and we were talking about like shadowing and talking to yourself before the break.
Right.
And I have to admit, I do talk to myself in English, sometimes in public, and it gets me some weird looks. But
Well, it's a good strategy.
oh, okay, good.
It really does work. It's like, you're actively using the language, so
Yeah.
you're not just kind of passively absorbing it.
Yeah.
You're forcing your brain to produce it,
Yeah.
to use the vocabulary and the grammar.
I do notice that when I talk to myself, like I tend to like stumble less.
Yeah.
Like things flow a little easier.
It becomes more automatic.
Yeah. But what about like if you don't have a huge vocabulary? Like, what if you don't know the words?
That's a great point. And, this is something that they talked about too.
Oh, okay.
And they recommended using paraphrasing and mental associations.
Oh, right. Like where you describe the thing.
Yeah.
Instead of trying to like translate the word.
Right, exactly. So instead of saying squirrel, you could say the little animal with a fluffy tail that lives in the trees.
Right.
That's a good one. You're still communicating.
Yeah, I like that.
Ah.
It's like I'm playing charades with myself in my brain.
Exactly. It's a good way to kind of, think about it.
Yeah, it's fun. It's better than like flipping through a dictionary.
Yeah, it's definitely.
Okay, and they also talked about this idea of creating those mental associations, right?
Yes.
It's like building a network of connections in your brain.
Exactly.
So you're not just relying on translation.
Yeah, you're creating your own kind of internal visual dictionary.
Oh, yeah, I like that. They gave the example of like, instead of just translating the word apple,
Right.
actually picturing an apple.
Yes, its colors, its shape,
What it feels like, the sound is like biting into it.
Yeah, and that's where the power of visualization really comes in because
Okay.
when you create that visual image, it kind of strengthens that connection between the word and its meaning.
Okay.
And it bypasses that translation.
It's like I'm imprinting it on my brain.
Yeah, exactly.
That's cool. So we've got like immersion, we've got like descriptive strategies, paraphrasing, mental associations. It's like all these techniques are about creating this direct link
Exactly.
at our brain.
It's all about creating that direct connection and moving away from translation.
Wow, that's so cool.
Yeah, it's pretty amazing what our brains can do.
I know. And one of the things that they emphasize too is like trusting the process.
Yes.
You know, like it doesn't happen overnight.
Definitely not.
It's like you have to put in the time and like the effort and be okay with like kind of sounding dumb sometimes.
Absolutely. And it's about consistent practice. You know, it's like building a muscle. At first, it feels awkward,
Right.
you know,
Right.
but the more you use it, the stronger it gets.
It's like, you know, those small wins.
Yes.
Like they were talking about, you know, don't try to like become fluent in a week, you know.
Right.
It's like just try to think in English for 5 minutes.
Exactly. And, you know, celebrating those small victories.
Yeah.
Because those build momentum. They give you that sense of progress and keep you motivated.
Yeah, like a mental high five.
Exactly.
You know, we've been talking about like all these internal techniques,
Right.
you know, mental pictures and stuff. What about like external stuff? Does our environment like actually make a difference?
That's a great point. And I think it's definitely something to consider, even though, you know, they didn't specifically address it.
Okay.
But I think, you know, our environment does influence our thinking.
I know, like for me, when I'm around like English speakers,
Yeah.
I tend to think in English more.
Exactly. It's like your brain is just kind of naturally switching into that mode.
Yeah, it's like my default setting gets like overridden.
Right. And so, you know, you're constantly surrounded by your native language
Yeah.
can be more challenging,
Right.
you know, to kind of switch your brain into English.
Okay, so what can we do? Like, I mean,
Well, creating a mini English world for yourself
oh, okay.
at home can be really, really beneficial.
So like watching movies and listening to music and stuff.
Exactly. Reading books even.
Yeah.
You know, creating that kind of immersive experience
Yeah.
can really help.
So we're combining our internal efforts with our external environment.
Precisely. And I think that's a really great takeaway. You know,
Yeah.
it's not just about those mental exercises.
Yeah.
It's about creating that ecosystem for yourself that supports your language learning.
I love that. It's
Yeah.
like we're creating this world where English is just like a natural part of our life.
Exactly. And the more you do that, the more natural it will become.
Wow, this is great. I love this deep dive. We've covered like so much. From internal stuff like visualization and paraphrasing
Yeah.
to the external stuff.
Yeah.
I feel really inspired to go out and actually do this stuff.
That's great. And, you know, remember, it's a journey. There
Yeah.
will be times where you feel frustrated.
Right.
You know, you feel like you're not making progress, but
It's part of it.
it's all part of it. The important thing is just to keep practicing,
Yeah.
keep experimenting,
Keep going.
and just believe in yourself.
Yeah. All right. Well, this has been amazing. We've given everyone a lot to think about
We have.
and a lot to try.
Yes, and, you know, we'd love to hear from our listeners about their experiences.
Yeah, like what are you going to try today?
Yeah.
Are you going to visualize? Are you going to talk to yourself? Are you going to create that mini English world in your house? Let us know.
Absolutely. Every step you take is a step closer to fluency.
I love that. All right. Thanks for joining us on this deep dive. Until next time, keep those brains buzzing.
And we're back. Wow, so many good techniques. Like, I'm thinking about those mental pickers
Yeah.
and like talking to yourself and creating that little English world. It's like amazing how like creative we can get. I know. It's really cool to see how like all these different approaches kind of tap into the same idea, you know, like getting away from that translation.
Right.
And just like directly.
Straight to the meaning.
Yes.
Yeah. And yeah, they talked about trusting the process, you know, like it's not going to happen overnight. But like if you put in the work, you're going to have those haha moments. Have you found that to be true, like in your experience?
Absolutely. It's like any skill, you know? It's
Yeah.
like building a muscle. At first, it's a little shaky.
Right. You're like self-conscious.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But the more you use it, the stronger it gets.
Yeah. And I love what they said about those like little wins. You know,
Yes.
it's like, you know, don't try to be fluent in a week.
Right.
You know, just try to think in English for 5 minutes.
Exactly. Just start small.
Yeah.
And celebrate those little victories because they really do build momentum.
They do. It's like proof that it's working.
Yes. And it gives you that, you know, that motivation to keep going.
Yeah. Like it's like a mental high five.
Exactly.
You know? Okay. So, you know, thinking about all of this, it just makes me think about like how adaptable our brains are.
I know.
You know, it's like we can teach ourselves to think in a whole other language.
It's amazing. It really speaks to the plasticity of our brains.
Yeah. It's like I'm unlocking like a whole new part of my mind.
Exactly. And it's not just about, you know, the language itself. It's about like expanding your cognitive horizons.
That is so cool. So as we wrap up this deep dive,
Yeah.
what's like one big takeaway? Like what do we want everybody to remember?
I would say Just be patient with yourself, embrace the process, and remember, like, every little step that you take, every effort that you make is rewiring your brain.
I love that. And, on that note, I have a challenge for everyone listening.
Okay, I like it.
What is one technique you're going to try today?
Yes.
Are you going to, try visualizing? Are you going to try talking to yourself? Maybe create that little English world in your home? What are you going to do? Try it out and let us know. We would love to hear how it goes.
Absolutely, because remember, every step you take is bringing you closer to fluency.
I love that. Thanks for joining us. We'll see you next time.